The detective read the note again, feeling the weight of its warning. The palace, grand and peaceful on the outside, had a hidden darkness festering beneath the surface. His investigation had ruffled feathers, and someone wanted him to know they were watching. The message implied that the danger extended far beyond the obvious suspects. But who had sent the note? And how deeply did this conspiracy run? The detective worked till midnight. Trying to put the pieces of information he has gathered, he checked the note that was slipped under his door once again but felt heaviness in his eyes. He struggled for a while, but he eventually fell asleep. He decided it was time to confront Chief Balogun Oluwo, the head of the royal council. The chief was a powerful man with deep connections to every corner of Kojola town. If anyone had a motive to remove King Adidran, it was him. The policies the king had planned would have stripped away much of the council's authority, redistributing land and power to the people, an idea the council found dangerous. When the detective arrived at the chief's quarters, Balogun was waiting for him, seated in a large, ornately carved chair. His face was stern, yet calm. The chief was not easily rattled.
"Oh, Inspector, you are welcome to my home. My driver told me you are here. Please, sit down. I hear you have many questions for me. Let us waste no time, then." The king's death was no accident, Chief. I know poison was involved. And I also know the council had much to lose from his proposed reforms, since many in the council of chiefs were against the king's reform policies. Why don't we start there?
The chief's face remained expressionless. He then continued to talk.
It is true that King Adidran's vision was not one I agreed with. His policies threatened the very fabric of our tradition. But to suggest that I, or the council, would resort to murder. That is a dangerous accusation, Inspector. That is unfair of you.
Perhaps not the entire council, but maybe you. Ton pressed. You had the most to gain if the king were removed before those reforms could be enacted. A new ruler, one more agreeable to your interest, would allow you to retain your influence. Chief Balogun Oluwo leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing, pointing fingers at the detective. His countenance changed.
Careful, Inspector. You walk on thin ice with these insinuations. I did not need to kill the king to oppose his reforms. Politics is about patience, maneuvering. What you suggest is the work of a fool or a desperate man.
Detective Ton met the chief's gaze.
Desperate men often act when their backs are against the wall. I'm not accusing you, Chief, but I'm telling you this, whoever killed the king didn't do it alone. This was planned, and those involved are skilled at covering their tracks. If you know anything, now is the time to speak.
For a moment, there was silence. The chief finally exhaled deeply, his eyes glinting with something unreadable. Then he said, "There are things in this palace, Inspector, that even I cannot control. You're right about one thing, there are more players in this game than you realize. But I am not the one you should be looking at." "Then who?" Ton demanded, but Oluwo remained silent, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. The conversation left Ton with more questions than answers. Chief Oluwo had hinted that the conspiracy was deeper, involving forces beyond the council's power. But if not the council, then who? Later that evening, Ton returned to his quarters to find another note waiting for him, this time slipped under his pillow. The message was brief, but chilling. The Queen, Olori Mareo. Ton had interviewed her already, but she had seemed distraught, lost in grief. Could it all have been an act? He recalled the rumors he had heard, the whispers that the king had planned to take another wife, potentially threatening Mareo's influence and position within the palace. Driven by suspicion, Ton decided to revisit the queen, this time under the pretense of asking further questions. He found her in her private garden, surrounded by flowers in full bloom. She looked serene, her face calm as she trimmed the roses with delicate hands.
Inspector Tund, what brings you to me again? Surely you have asked all the questions you need.
Not quite, Your Majesty, Ton replied, watching her closely.
Not quite, Your Majesty. I received some new information and wanted to clarify a few things.
She continued trimming her roses, her movements graceful. What kind of information? Ton chose his words carefully.
There are rumors, Olori, that the king was planning to take another wife. A powerful union that might have shifted the balance in the palace. Did you know anything about that?
For the first time, Mario's hand hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Then she resumed her task, but her voice was a shade colder. I was aware of the possibility. The king was always making decisions for the good of Kojola. I trusted his judgment. Ton took a step closer, sensing her unease. It must have been difficult. After all, you were the favored queen for many years. The prospect of someone else taking that position could be unsettling. Mario finally turned to face him, her expression hardening.
What are you implying, Inspector? That I would harm my husband out of jealousy? What kind of wife do you think I am? You insult me.
I'm simply following the evidence, Ton replied evenly. The king's death benefits many people, and you are not exempt. If there is something you're hiding, now is the time to tell me. For a moment, they stood in silence, the tension ticked between them. Then, without warning, Mario's demeanor changed. She laughed, a soft, bitter sound. You think you understand the power dynamics in this palace, but you know nothing, Inspector. Yes, the king was powerful, but his death was not about love or jealousy. This is about control of Kojola, of the throne, of everything he held dear. There are forces at play here that you cannot comprehend. Ton frowned, her cryptic words unsettling him further. What forces, Olori? What are you talking about? But before Mario could answer, a shadow fell across the garden, and a figure stepped forward from the doorway.